Hi, my name's Dave Snodgrass, and today on Table Ready Gaming, I'm going to show you a stupid simple tutorial that can affordably bring a classic D&D monster to your gaming tabletop. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. Basically, we're going to start with our green stuff, which we've used in a previous video. This is, again, just a two-part epoxy. My green stuff's going to look a little lumpy, though, because we are using green stuff from the Jurassic period. But for what we're doing today, that's going to work out just fine. Again, when you're working with this, you just want to make sure you're mixing it up to get a nice consistent green color throughout, and try to remove any lumps or hard pieces in the green stuff. And that's what it should look like when it's well mixed. Next, we're just going to take our standard plastic base. Again, these are the bases from Games Workshop. I like the little beveled lip on them, and we're just going to push our green stuff on there and make sure we're covering the entire top of the base. Again, we're not worried about fingerprints or anything like that because we'll be rolling this out later with a rolling pin, but we just want to make sure we get a nice even coverage across the top of the base. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is just take a rolling pin here. This is just a very simple cake, I think a fondant rolling pin actually. I picked up in the baking aisle at I think Michael's. So really cheap, don't have to get super fancy here. You can use a piece of PVC pipe or basically anything small, but you just want to make sure you level out that green stuff and get a nice even consistent spread across the top of the base. Don't worry about running across the sides of the base either, because we'll take care of that later. So to apply our base's texture, we're going to use this flagstone rolling pin from Green Stuff World. If you've never used these things before, they're amazing, so I highly recommend them. It's just a simple roll across the base, and you're going to notice we get a really nice flagstone texture. So much easier than trying to carve or sculpt that onto the base. Once the base is cured, we're then going to take an X-Acto blade, and we're just going to cut around the edge of the base to make sure that we get a nice even line around the sides. You don't have to wait for the green stuff to completely cure, you just want it mostly done, but I will say the more cured the green stuff is, the easier this job is. If your green stuff's not 100% set, you're going to start pulling it and messing up the base texture. So unless you're in a huge hurry, I just recommend letting this dry for about 24 hours or overnight before you do this next step. As you can see right here, I'm starting to get a little bit of pull because the green stuff is not 100% dry. And don't worry about the green stuff on the base, we can easily scrape that off with the X-Acto blade, whether it's dry or if it's still curing. And that's what your base should look like at this point. Okay, so once the green stuff has completely cured, we're going to lay down a prime of a light gray. This is a brush-on primer that I'm using. And we're just going to do a light gray across the top here. If you're doing multiple bases, you could also use a rattle can to prime or an airbrush to prime. But since I was doing just the one right now, I just was using a brush-on primer. Also too, you might notice a small laser engraving etching in the top of the bricks. Don't worry about that. By the time we get this all painted, all that little detail will completely be obscured, and these going to look like really nice dungeon flagstone floors. And again, we just want to make sure we're getting a nice even spread across the entire base. Okay, so once that's just dried, we're going to just go ahead and put down the second layer of primer, another coat. Again, we just want to make sure we get that green stuff completely covered, and we don't want that green color really shining through as we start laying down our paint bases. Okay, with a lot of painters when they start out, they want to try to get as much coverage as they can with their paints, so sometimes they, I'll see, put on paint too thick, and it's always better to try to go over with 2 smaller thin coats rather than 1 large one. Otherwise you'll be obscuring detail and you'll have very inconsistent coloring throughout the base, the miniature. So then we're going to use this cold gray from Game Ranges, and we're just going to go in here and start laying down the base color for our base. Sometimes painting flat pieces like this can actually be really difficult because you have so much surface area that it's really easy to see things like brush strokes and stuff like that. So it's always good just to take your time and make sure you're doing it right. And again, if you're painting multiple bases, you can always do like an assembly line, and generally, say you're working on like 10 bases, by the time you're done painting the last base, the first base should be dry and you can just keep on moving on. Okay, so next we're going to use the Stonewall Gray, and we're just going to pick out a few stones to paint this lighter hue. And this will just give a little bit of variation on our floor. Now I do know it looks like I completely painted over the primer, but paint is generally semi-translucent, so the color that you put underneath it can be very important. And while it looks like we did cover up all the paint on primer, it's still important to get a nice even coat with that, so we can get a nice even coat with this gray on top. Okay, and just add a little bit more variation. We're going to use this Parasite Brown from Game Colors. This is one of my favorite colors. It looks great for bricks, but also like leathers and things like that. So if you're looking for a nice reddish brown, I really recommend this paint line, or this paint. You can see right here that my paint isn't completely dry. Again, this would be another benefit of doing multiple bases at once. So this brick's going to be a little bit of a grayish brown, but I think with the stone it gives it a nice variation. And again, also too, the miniature we're going to be putting on top of this is going to be covering up a lot of this base, so if the paint's not perfect, that's alright. Okay, and for our next step, we're going to use this black, and we're going to just go ahead and paint the edge of the base to give the miniature a nice frame. This will also start to tie the green stuff edge in with the side of the base. Also too, if you're ever getting basing material on the side of your base and you're not able to get it 100% off, this black coat will actually really help tie it together and kind of cover up some mistakes. And if, when you're painting this, the black paint gets on the top of your base, don't worry about that too much, it's pretty easy to fix as well. Just a little bit of gray or something like that will take that edge and clean that right up. You can see here we have to go a little bit higher on this side, just because we want to make sure we get that green color all covered with the black paint. There we go, our base is coming along nicely. Next we're going to take this Null Oil from Citadel. This is one of their shade lines. I also refer to this as Liquid Talent. So we're just going to get a nice heavy coat of that across. That'll also cover up some of those black spots that we have and kind of pull them into the base. Again, the miniature is going to be sitting on most of this, so I wasn't losing a lot of sleep covering up every little mistake. And we're just going to go ahead and let that dry. And this is the most important part of the tutorial. We realize that you've done the wrong base size, so your miniature actually will not fit on top of the base you've prepared. And just do everything again, like we did before, but for the larger base. So for this next part, we're just going to glue our acrylic ice cubes to the top of the base. Make sure we're using super glue that's going to dry clear. Luckily the gel glue from Gorilla Glue does. However, to give it a little bit more of a liquid look, we're going to go ahead and put a very thick coat of hard coat on top of this. Generally when you're doing this you want to go on thin, but with this case I kind of wanted to have some ripples and some changes, so we're just really going to lather it on and cover this entire cube with this hard coat. And when it's dry, it's going to give it a really glossy and wet look. Like I said, when we just lather it on like that, it's going to dry in these nice little ripples and really make this look like it's an inconsistent kind of gelatinous surface on our miniature. But most of the time, you would not want to be putting it on this thick. And we got a little off camera here, but we are going to apply it to the top of the cube as well. And two, I also let it drip down onto the base. I like to think that gelatinous cubes probably are like slugs or something and leave a little bit of a slime trail. So part of the base will be shiny as well. Okay, well that's it. Like I said, stupid simple. I mean, honestly, I was a little hesitant about building this tutorial video because it was basically make a cool base, glue a plastic ice cube to the top of it. But again, I was at Michael's the other day. I saw these in the clearance rack. I just got super excited about the possibility of bringing these monsters. And then when I made one, I thought it was really well done. I know there's a ton of tutorials out there on how to build different gelatinous cubes out of hot glue and other materials. And I know that WizKids also makes a great gelatinous cube miniature. My original thought though when I saw these guys is I'm always looking for more kind of unique spins to put on the monsters when I bring them to the tabletop for interesting gaming mechanics. And one thing I've always liked about the idea with like the gelatinous cube is whenever I attack it with like a slashing weapon, like it splits, like a small part of that cube like falls off and then generates another cube. So that's kind of, I wanted to have a bunch of these cubes ready. I haven't actually taken this to the tabletop yet, or really had a chance to play test with this encounter at all. So we'll see how it goes. If you try it at your tabletop and you have any luck with it, please let me know in the comments below. Again, I appreciate you watching the video, and thanks for your time. Have a great day.